Hello, good morning. I would like to welcome you to this webinar, and it's my pleasure to coordinate these discussions. This discussion will take place, which brings together perspectives from Sun 5G, Custodes, Curium, and Consentis projects. Today's webinar focuses on a topic of growing importance: how European cybersecurity policy and regulations are shaping security, resilience, and trustworthiness of emerging digital infrastructures. Thank you all for joining us, and let us begin with the first presentation by Professor Dr. Eleni Costa, who is Professor of Technology, Law and Human Rights at Tilburg Institute of Law, Technology and Society. Professor Costa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to very briefly discuss a little bit about the developments at the European Union level in relation to the digital identity landscape. So there's a very interesting program today. So I'm going to focus on the EU digital identity wallet and have some reflections on the protection of personal data. Actually, the time is very limited, and I'm just going to make some observations that we are going probably and hopefully to discuss towards the end of today's webinar. I will take us a little bit back in time, back in 2014, when the eIDAS regulation was adopted, and it was supposed to be a very forward-looking regulation for its time, because it was establishing a system of cross-border recognition for digital identities and trust services. And for the ones that were working with the eIDAS regulation at that time, one of the main novelties of the regulation was that it introduced three distinct levels of trust in the system. So the basic one, the advanced one, and the qualified one, which at the time was the highest level, and it involved certificates from qualified trust service providers, and it offered a presumption of authenticity. Because the aim then was to find a tool that would allow us in the online world to have an equivalent, something legally equivalent to handwritten signatures. Now, 10 years later, of course, the technological landscape changed a lot. And we see more and more changes coming up. So I'm not sure how resilient this new regulation that was adopted in 2024 is. We got at the European Union level the so-called eIDAS 2 regulation, a regulation of 2024, as I already said, which actually builds on the first eIDAS regulation, but introduces very important changes and differences. It is important to keep in mind that this regulation is designed to strengthen trust, on the other hand, to simplify technical integration, and it aims at extending digital identity usability across the entire European Union market. And one may wonder, have we achieved what eIDAS of 2014 regulation aimed at in order to have this expansion now? I can say that to a large extent, eIDAS managed to introduce interoperable authentication and identification systems in the EU. However, not all countries have been so successful, including Greece, if I may say. So let's hope that the eIDAS 2 regulation will be the tool to actually create this interoperable pan-European system. The deadlines that were introduced in the eIDAS 2 regulation are very tight and very ambitious, because by November this year, there is an obligation for the governments of all European member states to offer at least one certified digital identity wallet to citizens and businesses. And in a moment, I will explain you what is this digital identity wallet. If one reads the eIDAS 2 regulation, we need to pay attention to the fact that it introduces a new layer of trust infrastructure to support in general, the European digital economy. And as I said, it introduced the European Digital Identity Wallet. And it defines 4 new qualified trust services. So this is a big novelty compared to the eIDAS one. So it introduces the qualified electronic archiving, which, as the name implies, it is relevant for storing and managing of electronic records. The qualified electronic ledger, which is important and useful for record keeping. It introduces the qualified electronic attestation of attributes, which is digital attestation of attributes, so that we don't need to reveal all types of information that are saved in our wallet, but just the attributes that are necessary. And finally, the remote signature and seal creation devices, electronic signatures from distance, is something that is essential in order for European economy to work and function seamlessly. It is important that the aim of the eIDAS 2 regulation is to create a digital identity and authentication system that will not be relevant only for public authorities, but also for private companies. So the vision of the EU Digital Identity Wallet is to create, to offer every European citizen, but also business, access to this tool, the European Digital Identity Wallet, that is usable across all member states. So we don't have any cross-border hindrances. And the wallet will allow users to securely store and share not only necessary personal data, only the necessary personal data. And in this way, we see that it is a tool that brings privacy very strongly in the center of the debate. However, this is a discussion we're having today on cybersecurity, so I'm going to discuss very briefly some cybersecurity aspects of the EU Digital Identity Wallet. But before that, let's see, this is a screenshot from the website of the European Commission. So we have every member state that has the framework in place. There will be issuers of digital ID documents, the wallet user that will be installing on their device digital identification documents or other sorts of digital documents. And there are different service providers that will be also sending or pulling information from that wallet. There are a lot of personal data that are stored in the digital identity wallet. The name, the home address, identity card, passport number, driver's license, digital document relating to the vehicles you may have, information. The idea is that there will be even information about you coming from tax authorities. So there is a rich pool of information stored there. And then, of course, we can see that there will be a lot of convenience, but convenience does not come without perils. I will not expand on this. I'm always very worried when we create huge databases or when centralize information in one application, like in this case. So this is why the European Commission has very high in the concerns relating to the EU Identity Wallet, the issues relating to security and privacy. So they provide assurances that there will be respect to the data minimization principle, that there will be no tracking or profiling allowed through the EU Identity Wallet, that there will be very clear and easy access to the users of what happens to their data, who gets access to them, until what period, etc. And they have foreseen very strict privacy, but also security standards. So these security standards raise a bet for cybersecurity in Europe. When I was preparing for this presentation, I had a lot of information, but then I decided to cut it down because I would never make it within the time that was allocated to me. But very briefly, I would like to mention that next to this whole initiative on the EU identity wallet and the new digital identity framework in Europe, there are a lot of developments in the field of cybersecurity. One of the relevant legal instruments in this context is the EU Cybersecurity Act, which establishes a European-wide certification framework for ICT products and services. And one of the initiatives established there is the EU Cybersecurity Certification Scheme, the EUCC. CCC. So what is interesting in this case is that these two frameworks come together in order to ensure that the EU Digital Identity Wallet will be secure and will follow the requirements that are established in the EU Cybersecurity Act. And there is an initiative in the hands of ENISA that supports the certification of the EU digital wallets, and they are developing there is a working group working, and they are developing very concrete requirements that will need to be respected with every time that an EU digital wallet is being developed. And here I would like to take the opportunity to mention a project that we have in the Netherlands in our where our institute is participating in, called the Intersect project. It's about security in the Internet of Things. And we have a number of policy briefs that you may find interesting in the field of cybersecurity, all of them. And the third policy brief was on the EU CC certification scheme. I know this was very fast, but I hope I managed to keep it on time, and I gave some of the main points that will be in the heart of discussions with regard to the EU digital identity wallet, privacy, but also cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Costa. You were on time and to the point. Thank you very much for this. So now we will move to Professor Lilian Mitru, who is Professor in University of Aegean, a lawyer, Vice President of National Commission for Bioethics and Technoethics. So, Professor, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to participate. I have to search my presentation, you know very well that is, and upload it. It's okay, can you see it?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay. In the time that was allocated to me, 12 minutes, I'll try to deal with actually a quite difficult and not so new, but a hot issue in the last years. And this is the issue concerning cybersecurity in the context of artificial intelligence, and more specifically in the context of Artificial Intelligence Act. You know, I'm a lawyer, and I was involved in cybersecurity legal issues the last 25 years. And the people that are coming from this sector, especially the computer engineers and computer scientists, they do all know that cybersecurity was not always a hot issue. Actually, we have experienced more winters than summers in these years, but it became, the last 10 years, let's say, it became more it is interesting that the politicians and the economy have realized more or less the significance of security and then cybersecurity, information security, with regard to the use of their systems and with regard to safeguarding and protecting also public roads. And it's interesting to see how, for me, that I'm so old in the field, it's interesting to see how cybersecurity has become really, is now at the core of many legislative initiatives and legislative instruments of the European Union, Cyber Resilience, Cybersecurity Act, NIS 1, NIS 2, countless. And we can see that this cybersecurity approach has a dual role. It is, on the one side, it's an accessory regulatory tool that is aimed, this instrument to protect interests, rights, principles, public and private goods, values. And on the other side, it slightly became a regulatory target on its own. And it's not, it's interesting that many colleagues, they are speaking about a separate right, a separate fundamental right to cybersecurity. Of course, and this is something that is not new, perhaps, to the audience, that the processing of this large amount of data, training data sets, input, outputs, prompts, etc., renders every information system, but also AI systems, vulnerable to security threats and risks. And of course, we have to note here, and this is nothing that is only that is only deals refers to AI, but in general, failing to ensure secure AI systems increases the risk not only for the systems itself, but also to the entire information technology compliance environment, and it has many implications and impacts. What we have to keep in mind is that cybersecurity, also in the case of Artificial Intelligence Act, is introduced as a legally mandatory requirement. Something that we have also to keep in mind is that there is an approach of security by design. That means that the security aspect has to be integrated as an integral feature of an AI system, both in the phase of the development and in the phase of deployment. That means throughout the whole life cycle of the system. It is interesting that the high-level expert group already now 8 years ago, 8 years ago, in the guidelines for trustworthy AI, they have emphasized as one of the 7 requirements that they are derived from the 4 principles about an ethical AI. One of these requirements was the need for technical robustness and safety. And they have linked this principle to this requirement to the principle of harm prevention, and they have emphasized that the AI systems should be developed with, with a proactive approach to risks, and in a way that may ensure that they will behave reliably and as expected. And they have already emphasized that AI systems have to be protected against specific vulnerabilities. Of course, there are general vulnerabilities such as hacking and other threats and attacks, but these attacks in the context of an AI system may target the data, and there is the interesting term there, data poisoning, or the model leakage, or the underlying infrastructure, hardware and software. We are more or less familiar with this. The conception of cybersecurity in the AI Act, which has been adopted 2 years ago, in July 2024, was quite multidimensional. There is, at one side, there is a requirement, especially for high-risk systems. We discuss a little bit more about this in the following slides. The requirement to fulfill a range of requirements to mitigate risks to health, safety, and fundamental rights. You know, this is the triad, which is important for the categorization of AI systems as high-risk systems, if they may have implications and impact on safety, on health, safety, and fundamental rights. And this is the dual objective, the dual nature of AI Act, which is on the other side a product safety instrument, and the other side is an instrument to protect fundamental rights. And they have to ensure an appropriate level of accuracy, robustness, and cybersecurity during the life cycle. And at the same time, it is a criterion for conformity assessment. Before entering the internal market, these systems, high-risk systems, the second category, I'm not systems if you are familiar with this categorization of AI systems in the AI Act, that we have prohibited uses, high-risk systems, systems that are called transparency risk, and no risk systems. The high-risk systems is the most regulated category in the AI Act in this legal text. And one of the requirements is this conformity assessment. Before entering the internal market, high-risk systems are required to undergo a conformity assessment procedure, and cybersecurity requirements and cybersecurity measures and procedures and policies are one of the criteria for this conformity assessment. This is not the main, Article 9 of the AI Act is not the main provision which deals with cybersecurity, but I would like to emphasize that one of the requirements that are imposed on the providers of AI systems is to implement and maintain a risk management system. And I think that is important because cybersecurity and risk management, cybersecurity is at the very heart, at the very center of risk management, of identifying risks, of find out how to mitigate these risks, reasonably foreseeable misuse, potential risks, and establish the appropriate and targeted risk management measures to address these risks. And this is really important because it refers also to the so-called post-market monitoring system. It has to be ensured that even after putting the AI system into the market, it has to be monitored. The main provision is Article 15. It concerns also the high-risk AI systems. They have to be designed by design approach, as already said, and developed so as to achieve an appropriate level of accuracy, robustness, and cybersecurity. That means that they have to ensure product safety, and they have to be to ensure a consistent and high level of protection of public interests as regards health, safety, and fundamental rights. There are two elements in this provision mainly. They use also the term of resilient and resilience. The first element is the robustness requirement, which addresses errors, faults, or inconsistencies that may inadvertently occur as the system interacts with its real-world environment. And there is the more, let's say, traditional cybersecurity requirement, which targets the threat to alter the use, output, or performance of an AI system. How? By malicious third parties, which may exploit the system vulnerabilities. Interesting to say that part of this provision, part of the Article 15, is devoted to assign the Commission the task to support the development of metrology and benchmarking in collaboration with relevant stakeholders and bodies in order to encourage the development of all these systems. There are also some you know that the provisions concerning the general purpose AI models was something that has been added in the Artificial Intelligence Act after the first proposal, when we had the rise of all these and this huge development of ChatGPT and other models and systems. And then they had to add some more provisions on general purpose AI models. And one of these provisions concerned the cybersecurity requirements for general purpose AI models with systemic risks. In this case, they have to ensure an adequate level of cybersecurity, and in this context, we have to take also into consideration the recital 115 that mandates more specifically that they have to take cybersecurity protection against malicious use or attacks. And there are some adversarial threats listed there as, for example, accidental model leakage, unauthorized releases, circumvention of safety measures, cyber attacks, or model theft. This is interesting also. They put on them the obligation in order to ensure the cybersecurity that the providers of such models, they have to conduct and document internal or external adversarial testing of the model. There are no references to robustness or resilience requirement, and there is no explanation about this. Perhaps the fact that they had to add all these provisions are add-on provisions, and they were not conceived from the very beginning. Perhaps they have forgotten this, they had no time to elaborate more on this. Especially in the context of generative AI, I would like to point your attention to some very specific and extra additional security challenges. As already mentioned, these systems are vulnerable to traditional cybersecurity threats, and of course, data or the model poisoning, it's something that refers not only to AI systems. Another specific risk is the misuse of generated content for malicious purposes, but this is, on the other side, not something that is AI specific. What is important to reflect on is the significance that the significance of these threats, the importance of these threats and attacks and challenges is increased by the fact that we are dependent, such systems, such models are dependent in many cases on third-party data, on third-party models, and these vulnerabilities, they can compromise the integrity of what is the core of, especially of machine learning systems, of training data or general purpose systems, training data, models, deployment platforms, which may lead to hallucinations, to biased outputs, or also security breaches. I'm finishing. I have already exhausted, I think, the time allocated. My referring to the technical standards that they have to be elaborated in order to support regulatory compliance, the famous SEN and SEN-elec, and the principle of international first, and the reason why, one of the reasons why the Artificial Intelligence Act will not be, not yet in force, actually, before we have to wait for the elaboration of these technical standards. to ensure safety and legal certainty. Thank you. Here is some sources for more reflection and reading suggestions. Thank you for attention and patience.
Thank you, Professor Mitru. Really enjoyed your presentation as always. And now we'll move to Ms. Iro Hadzapoulou. And Iro is going to tell us about what we should know about CSA and CRA. Ms. Hadzapoulou, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's just check that you can hear me. Can you hear me? Is it okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So hello everybody, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are seated. It's a real pleasure to join this wonderful event and this exquisite panel of specialists. I will try to follow to the steps that everybody else started before me. Thank you very much to the organizers, thank you to PNET, and thank you for all of you for joining. In order to hear more about European regulations and how they affect organizations and how they relate to cybersecurity. So I have this task to try and talk to you about the CSA and the CRA within 10 minutes, and let's see if I can make it. So the good thing is that some of the things that I wanted to say have been, let's say, introduced like a teaser by both Ms. Costa and Ms. Mitru. So that will make it a little bit easier. So to start, we will start with the problem. So with the identification of what the problem was regarding products and services within the, not only the European, but the international market. So what was the case is, what is currently actually the case is that there are a lot of products and services that are available within the market, but organizations that want to use them and adopt them, or even end users that want to use them, do not have a very clear idea regarding how to compare the level of security of a specific solution, either product or a service. So there are a lot of, let's say we want to buy a firewall either for our home or for the place of work. There are a lot of brands that provide the same thing. They may have different abilities regarding, I don't know, how many users they can support or what kind of environment they can be implemented in, but the information regarding the level of security of such solutions is not transparent and is not available to the user. So as the European Union in total considered this problem, they thought also about of a possible solution that would allow for organizations to get a clear idea and get transparent information and build the trust towards specific products and services. And that the solution to this problem was the development of the EU cybersecurity certification. What is certification? Certification is actually a procedure that will lead to the issuance of a certificate. And a European cybersecurity certificate is actually a document that will attest, that will say and guarantee that a specific either product or service or project or process has been evaluated and conforms to a set of specific security requirements that have been established in the European cybersecurity certification scheme. And here the operative words are, of course, European and cybersecurity certification, because we already have a lot of cybersecurity certification, but it's not uniformal and uniquely identified and recognized within the European Union, whereas this solution that is being proposed is actually going to establish this baseline and this fully recognized solution within the European Union. To do that, we had the European Cybersecurity Act was published. It has undergone some iterations. So it started in the beginning with just having within its scope only ICT product services and processes. And as time went by, we had the incorporation also of managed security services, and this is why this slide looks like this. So there was this amendment in 2025, and now we have the proposal for a new update on the European Cybersecurity Act, which will also include something, or it's proposed to include something for the certification of the cybersecurity posture of entities. So not only services and products, but also all the other things that we mentioned. And how is that done? That is done by establishing a European cybersecurity certification scheme. And as both my previous speakers mentioned, there are different ones that have started to be being developed. We have the EUCC, which is based on common criteria affecting products. We have the EUCS, which is on cloud services. The 5G, the EU 5G, which is about 5G, obviously, the name is pretty obvious. And then we have the EUDI wallet, which was mentioned by Eleni before, and we have the EU managed security service for the managed security service providers. And from all this, the first one, the EUCC, is actually finished and already published and available to the market to be used. And we're already very happy to have the first certificates in Europe. The European cybersecurity certification is supposed to be voluntary unless it is specified by union law or member state law. And this is actually where we can connect it to the CRA. So this was the CSA. Now we talk about the CRA, which is a cybersecurity act, again, that imposes horizontal cybersecurity requirements for product with digital elements. So we are not in the full scope of the CSA that we were before, which talked about products and services and processes and so on. But we focus now on a specific area of products, which are the products with digital elements. What are the products with digital elements? Products with digital elements can be software or hardware and their remote data processing solution that have this ability to be connected. So you can imagine that the scope is huge. We can have software that can be used from a house to an industrial application, an industrial environment, hardware from connected toys to firewalls and smart meters, and it could be it actually could be anything that has a direct or indirect data connection to a device or a network. So that means that we have a really huge scope of products that belong to this regulation. What needs to be done, so the basics of the CRA is that the CRA imposes a set of rules for making the product available to the market. It brings these obligations to the entities that are directly related to the manufacturing, the importing, or the distributing of these products with digital elements. It says that there is a set of essential cybersecurity requirements that have to be fulfilled by these entities, these economic operators on the products, and that in order to be able to prove that these essential requirements are being fulfilled, there are some options regarding conformity assessment differentiated by the categories of the products. So the products of digital elements are actually split into three main categories. So we have and this category represents the majority of the products with digital elements. We have the default category, and that is they estimate that this could be anywhere from 90% of the products with digital elements. And then we have the critical products with digital elements and the important products with digital elements in class 1 and class 2, which are specific categories of products that have a higher criticality. So examples of such projects could be firewalls, operating systems, microprocessors and microcontrollers, secure solutions, antivirus solutions, for example. So it has to be things that are critical and have specific increased risks regarding cybersecurity. So after we differentiate and the manufacturer knows what their core functionality of the product is and in which category they are, they need to apply all these requirements, and in the end they have to choose the suitable conformity assessment process. So if we have to say in a nutshell what the steps that the manufacturer needs to implement under the CRA, they need to perform a risk assessment. They need to implement all the measures that are needed based on the risk assessment in the design and the development of the product. They have to establish vulnerability handling mechanisms and procedures to make sure that first the product does not enter the market with any open exploitable vulnerabilities, but also during the maintenance period of the product, whenever there's a new vulnerability discovered, they have obligations regarding the handling of that vulnerability and also the notification of that vulnerability. And of course, the conformity assessment and the reporting obligation. Regarding conformity assessment, we have different, based on the categories of the product, we have different approaches. And in the default category, the self-assessment is introduced, which means that if the manufacturer doesn't want to, they can rely on their own capacities in order to test the product and verify that it fulfills the requirements. And then we have the other categories which would most probably need they would most probably need a third party to assist them in the testing and the implementation and the certification of the product. When all this is finished, the manufacturer needs to affix the CE marking and create a declaration of conformity and provide several information that is called in the technical documentation of the product to the end users. And all that have to happen within a specific timeline imposed by the regulation. And you can see here the timeline, and it started some time ago, but what we need to keep now and to be very careful is that from 11 September of 2026, we have the applicability of the notification, which means that manufacturers have to actively notify the relevant authority regarding actively exploited vulnerability and severe incidents, and issue within 24 hours from the time that they have identified that there is such an issue, issue an early warning, and they have then until 72 hours to perform a full notification. And in this next slide, we have the conclusion of the timeline, which says pretty much that by 11th of December of 2027, we will have the full application of the Cyber Resilience Act, which actually means that manufacturers circulating products after that date within the European Union have to be fully compliant to all the requirements that I showed you, not just the essential requirements of the product, but also all the requirements that are mandated for the manufacturer in terms of their way of working, their procedures that are in place for the maintenance, the time period that is needed to support the product, the conformity assessment methodologies, and so on and so forth. So I really tried to put them basic facts and basic features of CSA and CRA in 10 minutes. Hopefully I achieved it because I was not looking at the time. So thank you very, very much for your patience and attention.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hadzopoulou, for this interesting presentation, and congratulations for keeping the time and making everything so thoroughly discussed. So now it's my turn. So let me start with my presentation. So can you see it? Yes.
Yes, Thanasi, we see it.
So as a presenter now, good afternoon from me. Thank you thank you the 5G team for having me here. I'm Thanasis Stavris Polikalas. I work as a senior cybersecurity specialist at PNET, and over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to take us from the 5G toolbox, which is a piece of EU policy most of us know, to something more operational, trusted connectivity. My argument is in one line is that the toolbox told European Union what to require. The real work now is proving it continuously and at scale. So let's start with why this matters. Why we should treat 5G differently from any other network? Basically for three reasons. First one, the attack surface. 5G is software defined, virtualized, cloud native, and sliced. The old hard perimeter is gone and entry points multiply. Second, supply chain dependence. Networks rely on a handful of global suppliers and on firmware, some components and software whose provenance is hard to verify. And third, strategic exposure. 5G underpins energy, transport, health, defense, among other sectors. So disruption or covert access, it stops being an IT issue and becomes national resilience, which leads to the question of the side. How do we trust connectivity we cannot fully see? And how do we prove that trust to others? The EU's answer took shape quite quickly. In 2019, Commission recommendations started. By October 2019, we had an EU-wide coordinated risk assessment. And in January 2020, the NIS Cooperation Group published a toolbox alongside a Commission communication on implementing it. Progress reports have tracked member states since then. The key thing to remember here is the nature of the instrument at the bottom. We see it's a soft law agreed by member states. It's risk-based and technology neutral, a common reference menu rather than a regulation. Keep that word that I mentioned previously soft. It explains both toolbox reach and its limits at the same time. The toolbox overall groups the measures into three families: the strategic measures, which are about governance and market structure, giving regulators real power, and two that carry most of the weight: the SM03, assessing supplier risk and being able to restrict or exclude high-risk suppliers for the most sensitive parts of the network, and SM05, ensuring multi-vendor diversity so no operator is locked into a single source. Second, we go to the technical measures. Technical measures are the engineering controls, baseline security, strict access control, securing virtualization, and the management plane and hardening the supply chain. And finally, the supporting actions, which are the enablers, which include coordination, standardization, certification, and funding. If we need to remember, the two critical things here are the SM03 and SM05. And here's what most of the people miss. The toolbox doesn't stand alone. It sits among a legal ecosystem that has hardened quite fast. The Electronic Communication Act, with Articles 40 and 41, which is the direct legal hook for many technical measures. And IS2 is the big one. Its Article 21, risk management duties, effectively convert much of the toolbox strategic logic into binding obligations for telecoms and digital infrastructure. The Cybersecurity Act gives us an ESA and a certification framework, the UCC, which was mentioned also before, and the dedicated 5G SIM is still to be developed. On the other hand, the CRA reaches into the products and software inside the network, and the Cyber Solidarity Act adds the collective detection and response layer. Soft law on the top, increasingly hard law underneath. So, where are we now? We have two figures that I found from the Commission 2023 Progress Report, and I flagged them as 2023. Since then, we have moved on. Around 2/3 of member states, maybe even more, have adopted or were preparing the toolbox-related measures, and only about a third had actually imposed legal restrictions. The third marker points forward, October 2024, NIS2 transposition deadline, when toolbox logic starts becoming hard law. Though many states transpose quite late. The headline actually of this slide is on the box on the right. The toolbox shifted the conversation. Supplier risk is now mainstream, but implementation is fragmented. And the report itself warned that slow movers set everyone's effective security flaw. Now, let's come home to Greece. Institutionally, we have a supervisory triangle, the National Cybersecurity Authority as NIS2 lead, as the telecom regulator, and ADAI for communication confidentiality. Greece has transposed the NIS regime and it's implementing NIS2, embedded the risk management, supplier security, supplier scrutiny duties. On the market side, after 2020 spectrum auction across all the bands, operators moved or started moving their course toward trusted European suppliers. And Greece backed this with instruments. A state-backed fund channeling auction proceeds into secure 5G innovation and an early international alignment on trusted vendor principles. And this is the heart of my talk. I have identified 6 gaps between policy and operational reality. Number one is fragmentation. Soft law plus uneven transposition gives 27 different security flaws. Number 2, the assurance gap. Measures are written as policy intent, not as auditable, measurable controls, and there is no finalized 5G certification scheme to prove conformity. Number 3, supply chain depth. We look at prime suppliers, but have little visibility into subcomponents, firmware, and the software bill of materials. Number 4, cloud and virtualization, cloud-native cores, edge, operand shift, risks to software pipelines, the toolbox barely addresses. Number 5, life cycle. We assess at the point in time, not continuously. And number 6, scope. The private 5G verticals and the road to 6G largely sit outside today's framing. So, how do we close those gaps? This is the idea. We define trusted connectivity as the ability to continuously demonstrate with evidence that the network meets the security properties, policy demands, policy intent, the toolbox measures, becomes a legal application under NIS2, and the rest. Then go to obligation becomes a concrete operational control. Controls produce continuous evidence through certification, software bill of materials, telemetry, testing, and that evidence is what lets a regulator or a customer actually verify trust. The toolbox tells us what to require. Trusted connectivity is about proving it repeatedly, automatically, and at scale. In fact, with 5 moves, we can turn the toolbox into operational assurance. First, we should map each measure to a concrete, testable control and align it with an NIS2 and the code. One control set, not 3 parallel ones. Second, certify and standardize. Use EUCC now and push for a dedicated 5G SIM so trusted becomes comparable across a single market. Number 3, make supply risk evidence based and repeatable. A documented technical methodology we can defend and review, not a one-off judgment. Number 4, continuous assurance. Software bill of materials, configurations, telemetry, conformance testing, revalidation. This should be a living loop, not an annual audit. And number 5, resilience by design. Diversity, zero trust, and test instant response, so trust degrades gracefully and never catastrophically. And this is exactly where the projects supporting today's webinar come in. Some 5G, Custodes, Curium, and Consentis produce the tooling and evidence that make this assurance loop real, rather aspirational. Taking all this together, they are how we move EU policy from paper to continuous evidence producing capability. Now allow me to turn these recommendations and assign them by stakeholder. What I would believe the EU institutions should do. They should finalize the dedicated 5 certification scheme, convert the toolbox in IS2 and the CRA into one control language, and agree a common evidence-based methodology for supply risk. Regarding national authorities, including here in Greece, a complete and harmonized transposition set with clear scope, timelines, and audit rights, and get the Cybersecurity Authority, ED, our regulator, and ADAE, working from a shared assurance picture. And for the side of the operators and suppliers, they should adopt software bill of materials and continuous monitoring now, building on multi-vendor zero trust architectures, and treat assurance evidence as a deliverable, not as paperwork at the end. I'd like to close my presentation by presenting here 3 things that I believe we should all remember. Number 1, the toolbox worked as a starting point. It makes supply chain risk a shared European concern, but as soft law, its adoption is uneven. Number 2, the frontier now is assurance, not policy. The rules are hardening. The missing piece is proving conformity continuously. And number 3, trusted connectivity is operational. Mapping certification, evidence-based risk, and continuous monitoring, backed by projects like the ones we're working here today, and how policy becomes assurance. And I would like to thank you, and I believe we are all open for questions. So I have received some questions, and I would like to start with Professor Costa. Professor, can you hear me?
Yes, it should be working now.
Okay. I have a couple of questions for you. Now, the first question is, how do we see principles of data protection by design and default playing out in the developing landscape of digital identity in the European Union?
Well, there is a clear interplay between the digital identity framework, especially as it is embedded in the digital identity wallet, and the respect in general of data protection principles. I mentioned in my presentation the respect of data minimization, but then of course data protection by design and by default is a principle that needs to be reinforced in all technical solutions that will be developed in the context of the EU digital identity framework. Primarily the digital identity wallet, but also anything else that might come up. So we expect that the challenge, I think, with this whole framework is that it needs to be compliant with a number of requirements arising from cybersecurity, from data protection, from artificial intelligence. We have just touched upon a few today.
Okay, thank you. And a follow-up, how is the digital omnibus affecting the framework on digital identity?
Well, I think it was Mrs. Hadzopoulou who referred to that and the changes, some of the changes that have been proposed in relation to the CRA. The digital omnibus, at least at this moment, because you never know what the Commission will do tomorrow, is not touching specifically on the eIDAS2 regulation, but there is an impact coming from changes in other pieces of legislation, predominantly cybersecurity related and data protection related. So we need to follow closely the developments in order to see what kind of changes will be introduced and how they will affect the deployment solutions that we are expecting in the context of the digital identity infrastructures.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience for Professor Costa? I do not see any comments on the chat or raising hands, so I assume that there are no questions. So, Professor Mitro, there are some questions for you. Can you hear me? Hello. So,
Yes, I can hear you, but hopefully the questions are very, very brief because I have to leave you. I'm a member of the selection body that we have to start now in some.
So I will see both the questions at once and you can answer how you want.
Okay, I can choose one. Okay.
So, number one, should we introduce a separate fundamental right to cybersecurity? And the second one, which is the role of cybersecurity in the context of AI governance?
Okay, the first is my favorite issue. The second one is more useful for the audience, I think. Let's say that one of the main targets for implementing the regulatory framework, but the AI and let's say profiting from what is AI can offer in the framework of in the context of an organization, is to establish, is to introduce, is to work on, elaborate on AI governance policies in order to embed the use of AI in an organization. And in many cases, actually, I see that many companies, many organizations, they do address this issue of AI governance, not in conjunction with the need of IT governance, cybersecurity governance, data governance. And what I would like to emphasize in this case is that we have to proceed, we have to approach, and we have to elaborate on if it is as an entity. We cannot disconnect cybersecurity, governance, security measures, IT and infrastructure security, and data security from the use of AI systems in an organization. This is something that I would like really to stress your attention to. It's not a legal issue. It has also legal implications. It has also legal presuppositions and requirements, but it's a matter of policy that has to be adopted. And if I have 2 minutes left, let me say concerning the first question, that it is something, a new separate fundamental rights to cybersecurity is something that is advocated by many colleagues, but I'm not in favor of this because we do have enough rights, enough fundamental rights, right to privacy, right to data protection, right to the freedom, personal freedom. And I think that all these rights, the fundamental rights, if interpreted and enforced in the right way and in an accurate way, they are adequate to ensure our security, also concerning the cyber world and the cyber threats.
Thank you, Professor Mitro. I hope we didn't delay you much from your other duties. Thank you for the presentation.
I have to leave because I have to start the next session and they are waiting for me. Many thanks again and good. Bye.
Thank you for being here, as always. So now the time goes to you, Ms. Hatzopoulou. Do we have any questions from the audience towards Ms. Hatzopoulou? I do not see any hands raising or questions in the chat, so I will proceed with a couple of questions to you. Thank you for your patience, first of all, Ms. Hatzopoulou. According to your opinion, which are the types of products that are already covered by European certification schemes?
So, So European certification scheme is I think the operative word. We only have one, so EUCC. So any product that can be certified under the European certification scheme based on common criteria is actually could be thus certified and is covered. That means that there could be products with digital elements, as the ones that I mentioned, that falling within the CRA, that could be certified based on using the UCC. Although I have to say that the Commission and the NISA are very, very hard, working very hard on the interplay between the EUCC and the CRA. So we expect to have some news very soon, because the piloting activities that were implemented by NISA for the interplay of EUCC and CRA have finished. So we expect to see some developments and hopefully see adaptations of the scheme to cover also the CRA.
Okay, thank you. Now, in the European market, there are already products that are circulating in the market. What happens with this product taking consideration the CRA? Should we remove them?
That's a really good question. I hope I will be able to reply, to give a good answer to that question. So based on the initial document of the regulation of the CRA, it said that everything that has to be done before the product is circulated in the market is only applicable to the products that will circulate in the market after December 2027. So that was the original point of view. And what the original point of view also said was that if there was a significant modification, then everything would be will have to be implemented no matter if the product was already circulating in the market. Now we have some more guidance from the European Commission on this subject, and it seems that this will not be the case. So it's not as simplified as it was before. All products that will be circulating in the market in December 2027, even if they were previously introduced to the market and they were not just recently put to the market, will have to comply. They need to do a risk assessment. So if I remind you, if you can recall a little bit the diagram that I showed you with the different steps where it started with a risk assessment. So the first step would be the risk assessment. They have to check whether the product that is currently in the market and it's already circulating in the market actually fulfills the requirements of the essential requirements of the CRA. And if it's not, they need to urgently implement measures and follow also the rest of the steps regarding conformity assessment, and then make sure that it circulates in the market in a compliant manner. So to wrap it up a little bit, it seems that all products that are either already in the market or are going to circulate in the market after December 2027 have to comply to all the requirements of the CRA, and the same applies for the manufacturer. So in theory, we should not have products circulating in the market with open vulnerabilities, for example, open exploitable vulnerabilities, and all products should have implemented security by default and by design, and technical documentation should be there, and this has been verified, and declaration of conformity has been affixed, and CE mark has been affixed to all products.
Thank you for the elaborate answer. What I understand is that the next years we have a lot of work in a quite complex environment.
That's true. That's true.
So unless there are no other question to the speakers, I do not see or comments. I do not see any comments or questions or raised hands. No, I would like to thank everyone participating, especially the speakers, and Sun5G, Concertis, and Curium, all the projects that have organized this excellent webinar once again. And I hope that we all gave you the insights in this complex environment of regulation, AI, and cybersecurity in the European Union, which is going to be our main focus and main business the years to follow. Thank you all for participating and hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you. Goodbye.